In 2017, Birmingham, England, law enforcement exposed a dark web predator whose crimes shocked the world. Matthew Falder, a 29-year-old Cambridge graduate with a bright future in geophysics, had descended into unimaginable depravity. Falder used the dark web to blackmail and humiliate his victims, forcing them into cruel and degrading acts.
Matthew Falder showed no emotion.
The judge in that case called him warped and sadistic.
Cruel, manipulative, cunning, and
29-year-old Matthew Falder, a Cambridge graduate.
He's one of the most sinister individuals, I think, in the 23 years of law enforcement I've ever seen.
It's been absolutely devastating. He's wrecked lives, he's torn people apart.
He targeted people of all ages and genders, exploiting their vulnerabilities. Yet, shockingly, he never met any of them in person. His desire for power, for control, caused deep and lasting damage to everyone he touched.
It was all about the complete and total power and control over another person.
Matthew Falder, born on October 24, 1988, in Manchester, England, appeared to have it all: a privileged childhood in the quiet, idyllic town of Knutsford, Cheshire. His father, Stephen Falder, headed HMG Paints, the UK's largest independent paint manufacturer, ensuring the family's affluent lifestyle. From an early age, Falder stood out as an exceptional student, attending the prestigious private King's School in Macclesfield. Later, he secured a place at Cambridge University, a symbol of his undeniable brilliance and promise. At Cambridge, Matthew Falder was admired by his peers. Known for his confidence, humor, and magnetic personality, he earned a reputation as a promising scientist. His specialization in seismic oceanography showcased his brilliance, paving the way for a postdoctoral research career in geophysics at the University of Birmingham. Falder's academic excellence didn't go unnoticed. One tutor even praised him as one of the best students they had ever taught, citing his significant international contributions to the field. During his first year at Cambridge, Falder entered a decade-long relationship with a woman of the same age, whose identity remains undisclosed. Outwardly, their relationship seemed normal, even typical. But beneath this facade, a darker side of Falder was beginning to surface, a side completely hidden from his unsuspecting girlfriend. It was during his time at university that Matthew Falder's sinister behavior first emerged, a darkness that would escalate into unthinkable crimes. He began with covert surveillance, secretly installing hidden cameras in the bathroom of his shared house to spy on his female housemates. In a chilling moment, he even admitted his actions to a male housemate. When met with shock and alarm, Falder brushed it off as nothing more than a twisted joke. This marked the start of a chilling duality in Matthew Falder's life, a charismatic facade masking a sinister reality. His obsession with secret recordings grew stronger, reaching disturbing new heights on his 21st birthday. Falder organized a bus trip for his Cambridge friends to visit his parents' homes, hosting what appeared to be an innocent celebration. But behind the scenes, he exploited this event to secretly capture unsuspecting women naked, violating their privacy without consent. And this was just the beginning. Over time, his actions would become even more depraved. Falder's depravity deepened as he crafted a sinister and deceitful scheme to lure his victims. Disguising himself as Liz, a fictitious female artist, he prowled Gumtree and Facebook, targeting vulnerable individuals. Pretending to offer babysitting or pet services, he baited victims with promises of up to £4,000 for nude photographs, claiming they were needed for therapeutic charcoal sketches. Masquerading as Liz, Falder assured his victims that the images would be destroyed after use and that no one else would ever see them. But this, like everything else, was a meticulously constructed lie. Falder preyed on the vulnerable, those desperate for money, most often targeting young women. Platforms like Gumtree and Facebook became his hunting grounds, chosen for the ease of creating fake profiles. Once he received the photos, his true, malevolent intentions came to light. Using his advanced computer skills, Falder tracked down his victims' personal details, names, addresses, workplaces, and even schools. With this information, he unleashed his most ruthless weapon, blackmail. Threatening to expose their intimate photos to family, friends, and employers, he forced his victims into an endless cycle of compliance with his degrading demands. Falder's demands escalated to unimaginable levels of cruelty. He coerced his victims into humiliating acts, forcing them to pose in degrading positions while holding signs with messages like "I am a sex slave." But he didn't stop there. Falder pushed his victims to record themselves performing grotesque acts, licking toilet seats in public restrooms, eating used sanitary products, or consuming dog food. He even made them pose with photos of Hitler and sing deeply offensive songs, all for his own twisted satisfaction and further manipulation. Compliance didn't end the torment. One young woman sent him over 200 images, desperately hoping it would satisfy him, but for Falder, it was never enough. There was no escape. The consequences of Falder's actions were devastating and far-reaching. He didn't just harm his victims in private, he shared their humiliation with the darkest corners of the internet. One of these platforms, called Hurt to the Core, was notorious on the dark web, widely regarded as the most depraved website in existence. The site was a haven for those who thrived on unimaginable cruelty, its disclaimer alone too extreme to repeat. On this platform, users were rewarded for their uploads and the popularity of their content. Falder quickly rose to the top, becoming one of its most prolific and infamous contributors. His actions left lasting scars on his victims, their torment forever etched into the twisted fabric of these communities. Falder reveled in his notoriety on Hurt to the Core. For him, it wasn't just about the content, it was about the power and recognition he gained. He curated his own series of images, showcasing the torture of the most vulnerable. These images became disturbingly popular within this twisted community, cementing his status as one of its most infamous contributors. The nature of his content was beyond comprehension, the worst of the worst. It's horrifying to think places like this exist, but they do. And Falder didn't stop at the images. He added cruel captions about his victims, turning their suffering into public spectacle. One victim, desperate to comply, sent Falder over 200 images, hoping it would stop the torment. But Falder's cruelty knew no bounds. He threatened to share those images with her mother and school, trapping her in constant fear. Even more disturbingly, he screenshotted his conversations with her and uploaded them to Hurt to the Core, where viewers derived sick pleasure from her anguish. Posing as a teenage girl in an online forum, Falder also manipulated a vulnerable young woman from Eastern Europe into an online relationship. In one exchange with another abuser, he revealed his true intent, saying, "I'm thinking of just betraying her as harshly as I can to see how much I can mentally mess her up. I think there's even a bit of a chance that she ends it all." Another victim was a young female in foster care who was told her disabled brother would be taken away from her if she did not keep sending degrading photos. Falder forced her to pose with a sign that said, "I look after my disabled brother. Now I am being forced to strip." Harrowingly, he also managed to manipulate a young father into forcing himself on his son and filming it, to which Falder shared with his fellow sick friends.
Have you done that?
No comment.
Have you sent pictures of your blackmail victims to the parents?
No comment.
Of the victim, the grandparents?
No comment.
The workplace?
He also shared instructional videos on how to intimately abuse youths, as well as guidance on how to give youths sweets which were soaked in urine or even more disturbing bodily fluids. In further posts, he wrote about arranging to meet a blackmailed victim for intimacy in a remote location and told how he would make the person tie themselves to a tree, lock the bindings, and throw away the key to ensure a slow and painful death. Falder also suggested a twisted game in which a curling iron would be inserted into a woman's vagina, and could only be turned off if they answered a question correctly. He also posted a video of a man repeatedly throwing a victim, who couldn't swim, into a pool, with them submerged for several seconds each time, and also spoke of fantasies of breaking victims' bones one by one until they slowly died. It is truly the worst of the worst. Falder reveled in his notoriety, taunting his victims with the confidence that he could never be caught. "You'll never find me," he gloated, shielded by layers of digital anonymity. Using encrypted email addresses and advanced Tor software, he navigated the dark web with ease, masking his every move. To further complicate any pursuit, he strategically operated email accounts based in Russia, knowing this would create significant barriers for British authorities. Over time, Falder crafted at least 70 different online identities, adopting sinister aliases like in the Garden Evil Mind and 666 Devil, each one a new tool in his campaign of terror. In 2014, using the alias 666 Devil, Falder's depravity took an even darker turn. He posted on Hurt to the Core, seeking suggestions for torturing his so-called daughter during what he chillingly described as the week of suffering. But Falder had no daughter. These horrific plans were actually intended for another father, one of his blackmail victims, whom he coerced into unimaginable acts. This post was so disturbing it caught the attention of law enforcement, sparking an urgent, worldwide investigation by multiple national crime agencies to locate and save the girl they believed to be in immediate danger. The investigation into Falder's crimes became a global operation, involving the UK's Government Communications Headquarters GCHQ, the US Department of Homeland Security, Europol, the Australian Federal Police, and law enforcement agencies from New Zealand and Israel. The sheer complexity of his online activities meant the investigation stretched over 4 long years. During this time, Falder continued his reign of terror, blackmailing victims and forcing them to produce degrading content, leaving a trail of devastation that spanned the globe. During the years-long investigation, the impact of Falder's relentless cruelty pushed 4 of his victims to attempt ending their own lives. As authorities closed in, they uncovered a name, Matthew Falder, and traced him to an address in Birmingham, England. But before they could arrest him, they needed irrefutable proof. Investigators observed him using his laptop, confirming he was the man behind the screen. This step was crucial, as Falder's crimes were all committed online. He never met his victims in person. The realization of how much suffering he caused without ever coming face to face with his victims is both astounding and deeply infuriating. On June 21, 2017, authorities apprehended Matthew Falder at his workplace.
The offences that I've arrested you on suspicion of being involved in were blackmail, causing or inciting a child to engage in sexual activity, possessing indecent images of children.
Sounds like the rap sheet from hell.
Distributing indecent images of children, and causing GBH injuries to a person.
The once confident predator appeared stunned and speechless, struggling to process the reality of his arrest. As officers handcuffed him, Falder attempted to minimize his actions, claiming innocence. He tried to rationalize his dark web activity, calling it a misunderstanding, and suggested it was only to hide his online behavior from his girlfriend. When officers began listing his charges, Falder's demeanor shifted, but his excuses continued. A search of his flat later uncovered 484 illicit images on his computer, solid evidence of the horrors he had orchestrated. As investigators delved deeper into Falder's online activity, the full extent of his depravity came to light. His uploads to Hurt to the Core had earned him VIP status, a grim testament to the scale and nature of his contributions.
When the sole motivation of an individual is purely to cause pain to another, that's quite hard to grasp.
This revelation led to Falder being charged with 188 offences, highlighting the monstrous scope of his crimes. Authorities estimated that Falder had between 60 and 180 victims, each one scarred by his calculated cruelty and unrelenting abuse. NCA Senior Investigator Officer Matt Sutton described Matthew Falder as one of the most chilling offenders he had ever encountered. In more than 30 years of law enforcement, I've never come across an offender whose sole motivation was to inflict such profound anguish and pain, Sutton stated. Falder reveled in it. He also highlighted the unprecedented challenges posed by Falder's case, calling it one of the most complex investigations ever undertaken. Falder's technological expertise allowed him to remain hidden in the darkest corners of the dark web, making him a uniquely elusive and dangerous predator. The investigation into Matthew Falder's crimes marked a watershed moment in the fight against dark web predators. Will Kerr, the NCA Director of Vulnerabilities, issued a stark warning: Falder is not alone. There are many other users of these dark websites that we are very concerned about. His statement underscored the chilling reality. While Falder's arrest was a victory, the battle against online exploitation was far from over. The institutions once associated with Matthew Falder were quick to distance themselves after his horrific crimes came to light. Cambridge University expressed its outrage and took the rare step of actively seeking to strip him of his qualifications. Birmingham University, where Falder had pursued his postdoctoral research, stated it was deeply shocked and distressed by his offences. Meanwhile, Gumtree, one of the platforms Falder exploited, welcomed his conviction, emphasizing its commitment to user safety and pledging to prevent such misuse in the future. In court, one victim bravely recounted her harrowing experience with Matthew Falder. She had advertised nanny services on Gumtree to support her studies when she was approached by Liz Falder's fabricated online persona. Under the guise of an art project, Liz offered her money in exchange for nude photos. Trusting the promise of anonymity, she complied only to have her life spiral into a nightmare. Falder revealed he had tracked her down on Facebook, learning her address and the identities of her friends. From that point on, the victim was inundated with messages morning to night designed to keep her in a constant state of fear and helplessness. The victim described how Falder's torment isolated her from her loved ones. She felt alienated from her family, convinced they could never truly understand the depth of her trauma. The shame and humiliation tied to the images made sharing her ordeal feel impossible. Reflecting on her experience, she highlighted the unique agony of Falder's psychological manipulation. "I felt that no one would understand me," she said, "because there was no one there holding a knife to me." This invisible but relentless abuse shattered her trust in others, leaving her relationships with friends and family deeply strained. The victim shared the heartbreaking toll Falder's actions had on her life. She described how maintaining close connections became nearly impossible when her trust in others was fundamentally broken. At her lowest point, she didn't feel safe anywhere, not at school, not even at home, because she knew Falder had her personal addresses. Her story was just one of many. On October 16, 2017, Matthew Falder faced justice, admitting to an astounding 137 charges involving 47 individuals, each a victim of his unrelenting cruelty. Will Kerr, a seasoned officer with the National Crime Agency, described Matthew Falder as the most dangerous individual he had encountered in his 28-year career. His sentiment was echoed by Phil McKay, a BBC journalist with 25 years of trial coverage experience, who admitted he had never heard testimony as abhorrent as that presented in Falder's case. Over 3 days, the court detailed the full scope of Falder's crimes. For 35 minutes, the charges were read aloud, an agonizing catalogue of cruelty, while Falder sat emotionless, unmoved by the devastation he had caused. On February 17, 2018, Judge Philip Barker delivered a landmark sentence minus 32 years in prison, with an additional 6 years on extended license. During the sentencing, the judge condemned Falder as an internet highwayman, emphasizing his relentless pursuit of control over his victims. "Your behavior was cunning, persistent, manipulative, and cruel," Barker stated. He acknowledged the enduring impact on Falder's victims, saying, "For them, the damage is ongoing. It will never end, knowing the abuse caused by you still exists on unknown computers." The sentence was not only a punishment, but also a stark recognition of the irreparable harm Falder had inflicted. The judge further declared Falder a dangerous offender, stating, "These sentencing remarks underplay your relentless, obsessive desire to continue committing offenses." The chilling nature of the case left a deep impression on both law enforcement and journalists, who struggled to process the extent of his depravity. Despite beginning life with immense promise, Falder's descent into criminality was nothing short of profound. His initial 32-year sentence was later reduced to 25 years after an appealed decision that sparked widespread controversy, given the severity of his crimes and the irreversible damage inflicted on his victims.